present power, its strength, its heart, its mind, to join me in this precious hour, to bless, to break, to bind, and sever all the chains, the doubt, and veils that leave me blind, as we walk along through crooked path and leave this world behind.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another video, welcome to the recording. It is I, Lord, your master, your savior, Leonard. How are all of you? Oh my god, it's been forever. It's been absolutely forever. And you know what, let me tell you something. I have been going through a ringer this past few months. Honestly, it has been something quite drastic, quite crazy. I felt the absolute need to drop this video for a number of reasons. And quite frankly, right now I don't even know where I am. Okay, I had to transport this bubble part of my dungeon to a different location because they keep finding me. I think I have a mole. Someone's gonna die. Oh my god, but no, I'm so happy to be here. You guys have no idea what it's been like this past few months, honestly. Working at the portals has been a lot more demanding than I thought it would have been when I first initially took the job. So it's a lot of things. As you can see, I am slightly wearing slightly different attire. It's a bit more, together. I decided to, I guess, change my style a little bit because I think I've been using the other one for quite some time, though I do love how elaborate it is and how crazy it actually shows me. So I don't know if I can find wherever the hell it crawled to. I will put it on. Honestly, I don't even, I don't know. I don't know where it is. I don't know where my hair went. It was here one day and then it was gone the next. It crawled away. I was slinging spells at it like, bah, bah, bah. Oh my god, you should have seen. It was so funny. It was so funny. Oh my god. Oh, but I had to, honestly. It was starting to become a bit much, and honestly, and you know how I am. You know how I am. So it was a whole fiasco. But I am happy to be reunited within this sanctified area, this zone of holiness. A zone in which I can freely be myself in every respect of the God, and I can deliver all of the wonderful things that all of you guys want me to. Now, I will say this other thing. My grimoire has took a vacation. I didn't know they could even do that. But apparently, there's an article within the policy of the United, well, it's called the Alchemical Society. The United Mage Authority, the UMA, if you want to call it. And apparently, ensorcelled goods after a certain period of time. This is a whole animistic prospect, which I don't. In my world, it makes sense. Here, this is some things I have an issue with. I'll probably talk about it in another date. With my whole issue with the whole animistic approach to look, it's completely legitimate and I understand it. But according to my UPG, unverified personal gnosis, as well as everything else, I believe that almost everything has energy within it, but only things where the energy is sentient and displays a behavior or intelligence of some kind, that is when I attribute it to a spirit. Animals have that. They have an intelligence about them. They have an awareness somewhat about them. And they're a form of energy. Their souls are energy. A rock, for example, some can have dormant energy with it, but not all that energy belongs to a spirit. I don't think so, and I don't believe that. I'm sorry. If you do, that's completely legitimate within your practice. But in my practice, I have a specific tailorment to it. But I just want you to see from where I'm coming from and see if it makes sense to you. Because I feel as though sometimes, trying to plead with something that can't really comprehend what you're doing. And so then you have to resort to this sort of, overarching spiritual methods to essentially get to where you want to go. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole thing. I would like these candles, but honestly, the light is conflicting with what I have here for the lens. The camera is not powerful enough, unfortunately, to grasp my greatness. So I have to resort to just, some ambient lighting in the background with something in the foreground of a different temperature to shine a light on yours truly. So aside from everything else that's happening, The university is doing rather well. I've been teaching students as much as I can during my, my certain days at the university. We haven't had any issues since the girl with the grimoire incident, thankfully. However, we're still getting bits and pockets. We've sort of weeded them out, but there have been sort of hate crimes committed against students that were, either forced into a sort of hybrid-like nature or experimented on against their will. There's a lot of issues going on here. We have hybrids at the school. They are going through certain kinds of discrimination, as is happening in your world, unfortunately. Stand for those rights, because as I understand, within your world, you are a reasonable sort. And within your country, the United States as well, I understand that the First Amendment is something rather important, the first and second one, but I don't want to get into a whole political thing. It shouldn't really be. The point is, if you're here within the United States, as an example, it's all about freedom. You have the freedom to be, the freedom to exist. All of those freedoms go entailed. So by that same logic, if somebody has that freedom, then they can use it to exercise who they feel they are, who they believe themselves to be, or who they are genuinely as a person in their soul identity. Because what your soul identifies is different from what your body looks like, The whole don't judge a book by its cover thing. Not every book, reads as what it portrays. So that sort of thing. But that aside. So I'm excited because I'm going to speak to you about something very important and something very vital that I think all of you might want to think about and sort of dissect. And feel free to comment and everything. I am all hands for that. So I believe it is a little bit dark here, though. Should I light one? I'm afraid to, because it's going to. You can't see my hands. I would review them, but it'd be too much for YouTube. Let's be honest. But I feel like I do need, I think, something. It's a little drab, But you can see. Fine. I guess my hands. I used to have rings. You remember those rings? Guess what? They also took a vacation because I don't know where they went either. I was trying to get them. I tried to use Accio. I'm just joking. We don't use that. We use something else. I can't say on camera. We use that to reclaim our items. We used to go out. Just don't use my. I'll just use it when you need to. But yeah, so that's what it is. So at least they notified me a week ago that they'd be back in a week's time. Okay, but they took off 5 days prior, and then they let me know when I was asking for them. So they lied to me. Who knew, right? Rings. Oh my God, but no, seriously. So I believe I should just get ahead to it. The topic of today's video, and this was something that just hit me when I was at the portals, and that's something I have to talk about. Spiritual jurisdiction. Yes, spiritual jurisdiction. It is something that I don't believe a lot of practitioners, I guess, talk about, because it is something that I guess aligns as well as with the UPG, the unverified personal gnosis, but it's something that is very intriguing to think about. So when we think about jurisdictions, the thing that comes into your mind as well are things like the cops or the enforcers of the law. Okay? In a similar manner, jurisdiction means that there is a specific area that certain groups, officers, or enforcers of the law are allowed to operate within. They have the right to operate within that area. So I'm bringing the comparison to the spiritual aspect. So when we have, spiritual enforcers, that's another thing I should probably talk about a little bit here. Again, it's also with unverified personal gnosis, but I think there might be some truth to it, because if you believe that there's a certain order to the universe itself and chaotic, which is, look, I'm not even talking to you. Even your thing is not really what you think it is either, but that's another topic. What I'm talking about is that there are certain regions within the world and within the spiritual world that they are sort of, I don't want to say governed, like sort of law, like governors or lords or ladies preside over an area. Something like that can in fact exist. However, the jurisdiction can only extend to the local spirits or your genus loci, or perhaps we ourselves, because we are residents of this domain. The gods, for example, do not have jurisdiction on earth because they do not live within this plane of existence, and they do not even live within this same dimension. They live and reside in a completely different dimension. Egregores are no exception, because they sort of elevate to that position. If you elevate an egregore to the position of a god, they're going to reside in that same area. in that same dimension, but they will inhabit a different location within that dimension. But when it comes to the gods themselves, and I know many practitioners use them in their craft, you don't have to. I mean, there's that, you have to. I spoke about it in my last video, I think, which was about egregores, that I do not believe that, surrendering your sovereignty is a good thing to anything or anyone. As far as practitioners go, you are supposed to work with these spirits to achieve a result you want. You give them something as a offering of payment for their work you task them with, but then they also require something of you, and this will require that sort of offering. They're like, it's like going up to a random person. I have a job for you, and it requires you building a house, putting up framework, and all that shit. They won't say yes and do it for free. That's not how that works. You have to give something to this spirit or to this person that will then, balance out whatever power they have, so then they can put into the working. So any sort of power that is exerted from these beings, whether local spirits, whether, elevated or high spirits, things you can call like lower deities, to like the highest deities or whatever, if they even want to work with you, you have to give something that they find worthwhile in order to invest their energy and their time to help you. However, going back into the spiritual jurisdiction, there are certain regions that they themselves do not have jurisdiction in acting. This goes according to the UPG. Because people think, well, I'm working with, like, let's say Persephone or the Morrigan, or I'm working with, Hecate, Hail Hecate. We're working with anybody. Now, this is it's a sort of, different, it gets a bit complicated. But it's like the local spirits here have more of a say in the things that happen around us and within our location than something that resides thousands upon thousands of miles away. It's like how when you're trying to purchase a property, you would go to the landowner. Or if you're trying to pass a bill or something within your state, you consult the governor. And the president resides so many miles away. I mean, when Americans came to, when the British came to America, as long as some other people, to establish their own colony in their own country, for example, they would have to consult with, the things here, the people that were in power here, that came from that other dimension. Okay? It doesn't make any sense, and it was very time consuming to have to send a missive all the way out to England to a person, a tyrant 3,000 miles away or so, to approve something to be done within the colonies. That's stupid. It makes no sense. You're the ones residing in this location. And honestly, if you want an answer and you're not, at that level with these deities or whatever, you may not get the message immediately. And so you have to keep doing work and more work than what, would be required of a local spirit to get this thing done. But when it comes to jurisdictions, the belief is that there are certain regions that gods cannot approach or actively act in unless if they are given permission by a governing force within that location or the practitioner that resides within that location, assuming that it's at the consensus of the spirits that also surround that area. It is a crazy thing to think about. But when you think about spirits like watchers, or when you think about guardians, when you think about angels or anything else like that, in certain respects, these are spirits that reside within areas, and if they're not parasitic, they tend to look for issues, and they try to maintain a level of order even in the spiritual plane. When we have guardians that preside over cemeteries, rest of the dead, where people are coming up or residing. It's almost like a safe haven. By the way, if you want to visit a cemetery, I suggest that you pay your respects. You offer something at the gate to the guardian of that place so that they know you come in peace. And you don't just want to go to a cemetery and just start and just doing whatever. I live right by one. I haven't really entered one yet because, I don't know if they like me yet. But I'm trying to, I'm growing. I'm doing these sort of things. But hear me out, okay? When you're going into a new state or whatever, you essentially have a boarder, someone that watches it. Okay, they may not like you, but in order to enter, you have to give them something official that they can then approve for you to go in and do whatever you have to do. And even then, there are laws that govern that region that you then have to obey. Otherwise, you're going to not only offend the guardians of that area, but have yourself a huge issue that you don't want. You're going to either be kicked out, or you're going to be imprisoned, or maybe even worse. So you have to avoid that sort of aspect. When it comes to the spiritual jurisdiction within where you live, if such a place does exist, because there are lawless regions within the spirit realm as well as here, This is what's known as the sort of international waters, or I guess like the neutral zone. Anything goes here because no one has laid a claim to it. But there are certain regions within the other realm and this one where perhaps a certain person presiding over that realm has claimed ownership. So in order for you to enact something, you have to get the permission of what is there. Otherwise, you violate the universe or the natural laws that were put in place to govern everything, to ensure nothing falls to shit. It's a huge process. It's like, for example, in order for God to act within there, there has to be, it's like they have to go through the proper channels to work, because even the gods have to, obey the certain laws that govern certain things. Otherwise, they could have issues with maybe other spirits or other gods or things of that nature. They work on a completely different level, but you can't assume that they're all fine with each other, because they are spirits of different energies. They have different inclinations. They have different ways of doing things. So in order for you to properly access what you want, you have to give something that is not only acceptable, but that they can then use to whatever. That is why it is important to, I guess, consult more with the local spirits, the genus loci, or anything else within your area before you, I guess, look over to higher beings. Could they be offended by you seeking something else? Perhaps. And it could be the reason why perhaps you're probably having issues on your land. Either, things keep breaking in your house. You have things like flooding, you have animals attacking, whatever. Again, this is UPG, but it makes sense. Traditionally speaking, in certain parts of the world, even in parts of the US, for example, whenever a person will move onto ground that was either deemed sacred, that was blessed, or whatever it was, or that had some sort of spiritual activity, and they sort of just planted their asses there without permission, without offerings or anything else, you can easily offend who is ever there. And so they're going to ensure that you get out, unless if you, sort of remediate that issue that you committed, that crime to them that you committed. And it makes perfect sense. Let's say, for example, you own a piece of land, okay? Or you own a house within that land. How would you feel if someone just came and just moved onto your lawn without making any sort of preparations, any sort of works? They didn't pay for anything. They didn't have the legal jurisdiction. They didn't have the permission to be there, and they just planted their asses on your lawn. They took a shit on your lawn, and they said, "This is my lawn now." You're going to say, "No, you weren't here to claim this lawn. You didn't do the work that I did. You didn't grow the seeds, grow the plants, nurture the soil here. You did no work, and you have the audacity to come into my domain and claim it as yours." That is the issue we have here. So obviously, these beings like gods operate on a different level. When you have the genus loci, or the spirits that, inhabit the surrounding area, they can sort of foster a similar sentiment. Okay, but the people that die, according to the UPG, around the world and things like that level, they don't directly go to anywhere else, because there's orders and there's a hierarchy within the other realm and stuff. Most people, they sort of just wander around. But even those souls of the spirits need people to take care of them while they're in that realm, within that region and stuff. Some people just walk around, they try to see what's going on. But there are malevolent beings out there in the other realm that could try something stupid. So what happens is that a guardian is then, I guess, given the authority to act within a certain region and maintain the order, and I believe even protect the denizens of that realm within the area. And so that sort of factor comes into place. So you as a person who is a spirit, but residing within a corporeal form, are going to work with other ones of that kind, even to other people or whatever. If they don't already have the knowledge or believe the contact with you, I guess, what's the right word? If they don't really know you, they won't really approach. But let's say, if you go into a place because you want to work with them, you have to do the proper rites in order to, I guess, gain permission and the favor of whoever's presiding. It's like a hotel, or perhaps a nursing home or whatever, or even a hospital. If you want to be able to visit your loved ones or whatever, you have to pay the proper respects, because you may see it as them as a front to keeping you away from them, but they have been given the task and the power to not only protect but oversee all the residents within that building. That is their jurisdiction, their zone. But when you enter that jurisdiction, you have to make sure that you go through the proper rights, the proper permissions, in order to work and visit and do what you need to within that region, provided also that you are following the laws that govern that jurisdiction as well. Buildings are their own jurisdictions within within spiritual practices of that nature, because that whole zone, that area, you are not only dedicating it to a specific purpose, but it inherits a type of energy that is seen on the outside. That's why certain buildings are seen as like sacred. Things that it could be temples, it could be buildings, burial grounds, anything of that nature. Even places of power, things like office or whatever. There's a certain type of respect, a spiritual aspect that sort of bleeds to and from the realms. There is a knowledge, there is a conscious effort to acknowledge that there is something special going on here. And so that place becomes its own jurisdiction. The White House, for example, is immensely guarded and protected. It is a place of power and influence. What happens here can essentially influence the entire continent or the entire region or the country that happens. So, of course, if you were to invade or to even go into that space without the proper permissions, you're going to be imprisoned, you could be shot, or going to be driven out, and you're going to have issues. You could even be blacklisted for the attempts or for anything that you do within that sort of area. It can also work in a spiritual aspect. So that's why you can't just do anything willy-nilly. And there's not to say that you go into the practice with fear or anything like that, but go with understanding, go with respect, with bravery, but also, with, your protections, which I urge all the time. But, just go in there knowing that you're going into a place that is not your own. Okay? It is a matter of respect. Present something. If you're entering a building where there's perhaps spiritual energy, or a graveyard, as an example, a hospital, a hospice, a funeral home, anything like that, okay? If you sense a certain degree of power, energy about the place, you don't want any issues, or you don't want them feeding off of your energy, because spirits do that. Not all of them, but some do. You have parapsychic spirits everywhere. Okay, they just exist. Okay, and they're like vultures. Vultures just eat carrion. Something dies, they eat it. Okay, that's just how it is. You have to make sure that you do the proper things so that you are within your power and within yourself in order to properly handle those sort of situations. So, aside from taking those rights, the whole spiritual jurisdiction is something that I believe matters, and it's something that I think we should consider. And I think seasoned practitioners or people that research or occultists of that like sort of understand this notion and can comprehend it. And as you're watching, even though you may not be a practitioner or anything of the sort, you're probably just curious, just keep this sort of thing in mind, because it's something that's very important. You can't just go into someone's home without an invitation. The same thing applies to these jurisdictions. And if you do, for example, knock on a door, that's the first step. You are alerting the residents within the area of your presence being there. And by you doing that, knocking, it is a term of respect, okay? Not banging on the door or ringing the doorbell incessantly as to the point of annoyance. You are tapping, alerting that you are there in a manner that is respectful, but also alerting whatever resides within. You're doing that first step. When the door is open, you don't just rush in, okay? Make sure that whoever resides in the area, the guardian of the house itself, gives you the proper permission and the back and forth. If you have pushback and the guardian doesn't want you there, leave it at that and leave the premises. Find a different place. Because there are some guardians, some spirits that just don't want visitors, period. They don't want to be disturbed. There are other ones that do it for specific reasons, because what they saw before, unfortunately, was a bad example of our kind. And these things happen. Other times it could be from what they had in life that bleeds over in death. A person doesn't change when they die. That rarely happens. If you were an asshole when you were living, you're the same way dead. That's why you have people that talk about these evil presences or whatever. It's rarely demons. It's honestly an asshole that is digging around, and the energy, a psychopath, those things, the energy doesn't die. Remember that. It doesn't die. And if you're a hub of energy, and whatever energy you have as a person within your spirit is something that's transferred over to the other realm, you don't stop being that. Okay? If you're a criminal here, you do horrible things in here. When you die, you're that same piece of shit when you go over. And if there's nothing over there keeping you in line, you're going to be doing whatever you want. And sometimes that does happen. However, there are certain spirits that when they catch them, they're either brought to somewhere else to be imprisoned, or they are sent to the void. Okay, to be deleted. Or a whole bunch of other things. But that's a topic for another video. In terms of the void, the things beyond it, around it. But when it comes to spiritual jurisdiction, make sure that you are following the proper channels, the rights, and the permissions in order to act and commit your acts, whether of kindness or whatever it is. If you're going to petition them for whatever, do so in a manner that is becoming of you. You know, if you have a person there you want to work with, offer a type of payment that is worth their time, that is worth their while, that they will then work with you. And when the thing is done, make sure you are specific with the task you have given them, okay? And receive whatever feedback you get from them as well, because they are living people. They are just like us. They just live in a different place. If you want to work with them, then that's fine. But like I said, in terms of higher beings like gods, kings, or whatever that live in a different dimension, a different plane, I'm not entirely convinced that even they can do everything that they want to here. Because you have certain laws, you have local laws, things that work a bit differently. It is entirely possible as well that perhaps in order for the gods to act in here, they require a type of payment that they can then use to pay for their passage and their influence within that area. But even then, they don't persist there. They have other things to do. That is a type of UPG that some people may not agree with, but according to mine, it sort of makes sense. It either is or it isn't. That's all it really is. But it depends how it works out here. I haven't worked with a great deal of deities, or maybe any technically. I'm trying to work with one or two at the moment, trying to get some attention, see what's going on. Because I'm curious. I am curious. I have to know these sort of things, you know? But it is something that I believe is worth to consider. And it's worth thinking about. Okay? So, without furthermore, stifling or delay, I have to urge something as well. As far as my consistency with these videos, I do apologize. Like I said, life has been crazy. I've been trying to grow within my own power, grow within my own knowledge, as well as, dealing with work, daily life. All of us have those sort of things. It's adulting. We are doing that. And so because of the time restraints and the time that is required and demanded as those sort of types of jobs and works, it's something that I myself have to do with. I can clone myself here. I could do it in the other realm and tissue where I came from, but I can't do it here. So obviously, there's no real way around it. Okay? And but I do hope that if you do see this, you enjoy it, that you accept what I have given you as a type of information, perhaps even some guidance on certain matters if you want to work in this manner or whatever. I think it's sound advice, to say the least. Okay? So I want to remember to urge all of you to practice in safety, whether it is sex or magic, to make sure that you are treating others with respect and kindness when it is warranted. If kindness is not warranted, at least give them the decency of respect. Okay? First. Second thing, make sure that you are increasing in your ability, in your self-confidence, in your sovereignty. Do not give it up lightly to anything or anyone. Remember that there are people that in fact care for you. Look for those people. Understand that you are not perfect. None of us are, except for me. And make sure that it's a constantly growing process. Remember to meditate on yourself, on the fact that you are here, that you are present, that you have as much power as any spirit or God within your own life, despite however you may think about it. They lie in a different dimension. You lie here. One person can speak to a crowd of 1,000, and all those 1,000 people can either be moved by tears or moved by insult, but they have an impact. One person can do that. If you sort of lack that quality, train yourself. Increase your power, your influence, your strength, your identity as a person, because those things themselves have power. It is something that spirits crave, an entity, a source, their own righteous power, their own sovereignty. So we already have that, but it is great to exemplify that and to show other people that we have what is worthy of respect and acknowledgement. Okay, if you keep your brother or sister locked in a cage, please let them out once in a while because it gets rather gassy in there. Make sure that when you are practicing or you're reading books, make sure it's your own notes and not someone else's that you stole from another class and ended up making a girl levitate in the room and making somebody else shit themselves because you were reading scripts that weren't for you. Okay? Make sure that you're doing your proper research. Look up many different sources about one thing, because then you have to compare those notes and those sources to ensure that there's probably some legitimacy to those claims. Okay? understand that I, in fact, do care for you as I do for myself. Someone has to, and honestly, we should care for ourselves and each other, especially as a community, okay? If you feel as though you don't have a community and you can't really identify with perhaps mine, then try to create your own, or you be your own community. Do that, because you are a spirit, you're a mind, you're a body. You're essentially three things in one. You are already your own community, your own family. Find other things. Develop a relationship with animals, with other people that have like interests as yourself. No one should be alone, but you never really are. Consult spirits, people that used to be there, people that can see you, understand you, that can hear you whenever you cry, or whenever you don't laugh, or whenever you sigh. Things are listening, things are watching, The spirits always do. So try not to be a dick about it, or say, man, I want to work with you. Okay? So tread safely, tread kindly, and remember that I care for you deeply, that we are family here, and that, what lies in store for us, either good or bad, is a lesson to learn from. Goodbye!